whole time that we've been talking about kingdom and what Jesus did for us and the finished works on the cross, God's trying to get us to realize who we truly are. This is where he's getting us, that the enemy does not have power over us. He can strike and he can bite and he can try to inject his venom in our lives, but we have the power to shake it off. We have the power to stop it in our lives. How many is tired of just taking whatever the enemy throws at us and just saying, well, you know, the enemy's on my back. This is what's happening. We've all been there. But when does the church stop and start walking into their true identity? We need to stop giving the enemy and others power over us. People's assumption of us is not what we should be concerned with. One minute they're saying that we deserve something, the next minute they're praising. People are fickle. But you know what? We shouldn't care about that. We should only care about what God says we are and who we are. Amen? They called Jesus a blasphemer. Do you realize that? Here he was, the Son of God, and they call him a blasphemer. They also say that they assumed that he was working with the devil, working for him. How crazy is this? But we see this, that people, when we tell them the truth, a lot of times that's what they do to us. Or when we're trying to live our life the way God has called us to live it, they say, well, look at them. And then when we fall or stumble, the first thing they want to say, well, I knew it. They must have something in their life. They're not as perfect as they seem to be. They don't have it all together. I don't need to have it all together. But I have power and authority over the enemy. That's what I need to walk in. Amen? God didn't ask me to have it all together. He asked me to trust him. And one of his promises said, I've given you all power and authority over the enemy. You can tread on serpents, you can take up scorpions, and they are not going to harm you. I've given you power over all the enemy. Either God is true or he's not. And how many believe that God is not a liar? Amen? So if he says that we have power over the enemy, we have power over the enemy. People will label you with many things because they don't know or understand who you truly are. You will label yourself. Come on. I'm this, I'm that. And all these things are trying to attach to us and poison our lives and who we truly are. We need to shake it off. Back in Genesis 3:15, God prophesied that he will crush the serpent's head. How many believe that? How many believe that Jesus crushed the serpent's head when he was on the cross? How many believe that when Jesus said it is finished, it is finished? Do we believe that? Because sometimes we say it, but we don't walk in it. We don't act like we truly believe it. Because then we let the enemy just do whatever and rain havoc and hell in our lives. Instead of just shaking it off and saying, no, I declare to you, what you're trying to use as a setback for me is going to be a setup for my victory and my breakthrough. You can rant and rave all you want, and you can strike at me at any area that you want. But my God said you're defeated, and I have power over you. So I'm going to shake it off. It said woman's offspring will crush the serpent's head. And if Jesus can do it, we can do it too. Amen? We sing that song all the time. We're coming out of our grave clothes. And if Jesus can do it, I can do it. Amen? That's why he did it, so we could do it. Amen. He said, you will do greater things than me. Because he lives in us. And he lives through us. Amen? In Revelation, the serpent is described as a red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. I look at that. He goes from Genesis from a snake. In Revelation, he's a red dragon. That's pretty huge. Somebody's been feeding that thing. Think about it. And it says in here that God cast the serpent out of heaven. And in Genesis, it says he makes him to crawl on his belly eating dust. Some believe this is symbolic of being cast out of heaven. So he's cast to the earth, right? Crawling on his belly. And the eating dust may represent him feeding on men's carnal nature. So in Genesis, he's this snake and serpent sneaking around to a big red dragon at the end. I think it's because he's fed off of man's carnal nature for so long, and he has grown. And we look at him as he's so strong. But you know what? It still ends the same. He's defeated. I don't care if he's a little snake or he's a big red dragon. He's still defeated. It's time to shake him off and out of our lives. Amen? Serpents are depicted as sin, Satan, and evil power. But Romans 6:14 says, for sin shall not have dominion over you. Right? So sin is no longer a factor in our lives because it does not have dominion over us. For you are not under the law, but you're under grace. So we need to get to the point where we truly believe that it is finished, that Jesus finished it on the cross, and that our old sinful selves were crucified with Christ on the cross. That we were reconciled to God. Amen? We have been made the offspring of an incorruptible seed. Think about that. It cannot be corrupted, what is inside of us. Now, our flesh can be corrupt, but that's when we need to shake it off. We have an incorruptible seed that is inside of us, and the fruit of it is perfect. And that's what we need to allow to come forth. Old Testament, Moses raised up a bronze serpent on a pole in the wilderness to save the Israelites from the venomous snake bites. Whoever looked upon it and believed was healed. I always thought that was an interesting story, and actually it's the same symbol they use for the medical field now. It's the pole, and it's got the snake on it. And Jesus in 3:15 and 17, Jesus identified himself with the serpent on the pole, saying, Son of Man will be lifted up just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. And whoever looks upon it and believes, think about that, will live. What he is saying that sin and evil power and Satan is defeated. The enemy is defeated. Jesus already defeated the enemy. He said it is finished. What is it? What is finished? It's all finished, especially the enemy. Amen? If you come to the place of the cross and believe that Jesus finished it all, there is no serpent and its poison that has any power over you. Shake it off. Sometimes we don't always lift up Jesus in our situations. We lift up the situation. We lift up the enemy. I think that's exactly what he wants. He wants the praises, and you say, well, I'm not really praising him. We are when we give him credit for what's going on in our lives. We know more about what the enemy is doing in the world in our lives than we believe what God has already done. Think about that. And we see him coming and we get scared, or something's happened and we think, oh, how are we going to make it? God has already made a way. God has already fixed this. Why aren't we trusting that and shaking it off? The enemy seems to have power over you as an illusion. It's a lie. He's trying to get you to buy into it. He's trying to convince you that he has power over you. I'm here today to tell you he doesn't. And I know you know this, but let's walk in it. Let's shake him off. Shake it off. We need to declare to the enemy no more setbacks. What you're doing to me is going to set me up for my breakthrough. Lord is going to use you. You're just a tool in this. Because I have a power over you because Christ and God gave me that power over you. I have the Spirit of the living God in me. You have no power and authority over me. We need to declare the enemy that it's time that we shake him off. The enemy is under our feet. Luke 10:19. And I know that you guys know this, but I feel like we need to be reminded. Jesus says, behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all power of the enemy. Nothing by any means shall hurt you. And we talk about that, and people says, I gave you that you could handle snakes and scorpions, and if they bite you, it won't hurt, and drink poison. And some people take that to the natural part of it. But let's look at that on the spiritual part of it. We need to handle these serpents and put them in their place. And their place is under our feet. Amen? So, couple weeks ago, what really prompted this is I had a dream, and I'll just share this dream with you. And I don't usually do this. I'm pretty private about the dreams that I have. And it stuck with me, and everything that I turned around, it showed me a snake. And you'll understand when I tell you the dream. So I was dreaming that I was walking down my old neighborhood that I grew up in, and this girl that I was working with from Beacon Orthopedic was with me, and she was walking with me. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and she goes so far, and she says, okay, Donnie, she says, I can't go any further. And I said, okay. I was like, but she said, you just keep on going. I said, that's my plan. I'm just going to keep on going. And I'm walking down, and all these snakes are coming out. And I hate snakes. If anybody knows anything about me, I hate snakes. They're big snakes, little snakes. They were all these kind of snakes. And as I was walking down the road and the sidewalk, the snakes were coming out. But when I was walking, they just started moving away from me. Just making a path, like getting out of the way of my path. And I thought, yeah, that's right. that boldness that you get. I'm just like, I'm on the right path. Yeah, what are you going to do about it, So here I am, and I'm walking down there, and they're getting out of my way, and then all of a sudden I see from a way far of a distance, it's this huge snake. I mean, it is huge. And now that I think about it, it was probably more like a dragon. And it came at me and tried to strike at me. I mean, it was flying as fast as lightning. And I just remember putting up my arm, and it was like a shield, and it would smack that shield, and it would fling out further than it was before, but then it kept coming back. And this happened about 7 or 8 times. And I was like putting that shield up. I couldn't really see the shield, but I knew it was there, Brother Gary, because it was hitting that snake, and it was just flying it off. And then all of a sudden, I must not have seen a direction it was coming at, and it struck at me, and it got me in my neck, and I woke up. So I'm like, dear Lord, and I'm praying, and I'm thinking, I can't get this dream out of my head, Sister Pat. And I'm like, are you trying to warn me, God? That's the first thing we do. Are you warning me? Is the enemy gonna try to come at me? And he's like, yes. You can absolutely trust that the enemy's going to always come at you. And he will try to strike you in every different direction. But I've given you a shield of faith. Are we going to use our shield of faith? And I was like, yeah, but, the last time it came at me, it got me. I was like, is it going to take me down? And I said, what happens next? What happens at the end of the dream? And he goes, what does happen next? Do you ever have God answer your question with a question? And I'm like, why can't you just give me the answer? He was trying to get me to say, what happens next? What do you do? Do you just allow the venom from the snake to poison you and stop you in your tracks and stop where you're going and what you're doing and who you are? Or do you shake it off? Do you say that you may have struck me, but that's okay. The power that I have inside of me is greater because he is greater than he that is in the world, right? You may strike at me, and I may feel that strike, but you don't get to have victory over me because I'm going to shake it off, and me and God are going to move on with this thing. So the end of the dream is totally up to me. The end of your situation, as you want to see it, is up to you. How does it end? What do you do with it? That's what I want to ask you today. Are you going to shake it off? Mark 16:17 talks about we shall take up serpents and drink it, and if we drink of anything, it shall not hurt us, right? We should handle these serpents spiritually. We should say, no more. I'm shaking it off. How many of you want to stand up and say, I'm shaking it off? You may try to strike me with depression, anxiety, but I'm going to shake it off. You may strike me with a disease, but I'm going to shake it off. And it's so easy to see sometimes the attack that's coming from other people, but what happens when you got something inside of you that wants to be the attacker? And we got to shake that off. We got to shake off the jealousy. We got to shake off the gossip that tries to destroy other people. All of this stuff, we got to shake it off. And that's all that I have today. And that's what I said. You all may know all this already. Maybe it was just for me, but I felt like every time I turned around, I mean, you wouldn't believe the stuff that came to me before I got this lesson together, because I was like, what do you want me to teach on? What do you want me to teach on? I mean, to a point where I'd watch a show and there was a guy laying the boy was showed a picture of a guy. Oh yeah, I want to go out in nature. This is what happens when you go out in nature, and this guy's laying there dead with a snake on him. I pull up my Facebook. There's a monkey with a snake trying to strike at it, and it's just ignoring it. It's just handling it. And I thought, that's powerful right there. And then Brother Brandon had said something a couple weeks ago. He said he was at a church that had baskets over there. He talked about a snake. I went to work, and this girl said something, and I started singing this stupid song, like, I Believe I Can Fly. And she looked at me, she goes, how did you know? This just happened. And I said, what are you talking about? She went to a restaurant, this guy, they like a hibachi grill, and they do funny little things as they're making your food. They made a snake. It acted like it was out of eggs and like it was flying, and it says, I believe I could fly. All these things were pointing to this, but we need to shake it off. Amen? Amen. And it was like, I get it, God. I get what you're trying to tell me. And if this is not anybody else, it's for me. But I don't believe that, because you guys know God well enough to know that it's not about just you. Amen? Amen? What he gives you is for other people. So, and then the other thing was, I was thinking about this, and many of us know who Taylor Swift is. And years ago when she first came out, she had a song called Shake It Off, and it was talking about the attacks from people. You just need to shake it off. And even the world will declare stuff and not even realize it, that they're declaring it. And I thought it was funny, because if you know her now recently, she's had a lot of her videos. What is she dressed up in? Snakes. And I was like, she didn't even realize that she was saying shake it off, but she works for the world now. And here, of all people, in her videos, she's wearing snakes and dressed like a snake goddess. And I was like, boy, Taylor Swift. I said, you. So then my granddaughter, she had her little preschool prom, and they sent me a video of her dancing, and the song that they were dancing to was Shake It Off. And I was like, I'm listening. I don't know how this is going to come out, but I'm listening. But we need to shake off the enemy. Amen? Amen. We're going to come back here in about 15 minutes for some praise and worship.